In 2023, the Porsche Macan was the best-selling vehicle in the United States. American car manufacturers love to build humongous SUVs. Just take a look at the Cadillac Escalade, which is literally double the size of this thing. These days, just to feel safe, you need something like an SUV to drive around in. Can you imagine getting hit by a Dodge T-Rex in your little two-door Miata? Without the Porsche Cayenne and the Porsche Macan in the US, Porsche sales would be minuscule. When I bought my used Macan a little over a year ago, I didn't think at the time how much I'd end up loving it. Now, after living with the Macan for some time, I can tell you exactly why it's so popular. Also, it looks like I have a very interested fan that's lurking in the background. The biggest thing that Porsche has done with the Macan is keep the essence of a car alive. Die-hard Porsche fans obviously lost their minds when years ago the Cayenne and Macan first came out. I can only imagine the rage and the fury of Porsche lovers thinking that Porsche had devolved into being a lowly truck maker. This might be a four-door utility vehicle that Porsche has made, but don't be fooled. This really is a driver's car. I treat the Macan that I own just like I do with any other four-door sports sedan. This thing can actually handle corners and can be a true canyon carver. Sure, with the laws of physics in mind, this is not exactly the same as a four-door sports car, but it comes so close. This is not just any old SUV where Porsche just slapped on its badge. This has the heart and the soul of a true Porsche. This is just a base model Macan, 261 horsepower, 4-cylinder engine. I would highly recommend the V6, the Macan S with 375 horsepower. But even with the base model, Porsche somehow manages to make it feel quicker than it is, thanks to its amazingly quick-shifting PDK transmission. My 2016 Macan S has 339 horsepower, but had I known how much I would have enjoyed it, I would have clearly opted for the GTS. The 2024 Macan GTS has 440 horsepower, making that an absolute animal. Even with the 4-cylinder engine, this redlines at 7,000 RPM. With most cars and SUVs, paddle shifters are a joke. With this one, with the lightning quick shifts, you're gonna wanna use this, and even with the 4-cylinder Macan, you can still have fun. Leave it to Porsche to figure out how to make a 261 horsepower grocery getter fun to drive. This is the four-door grocery getter that you can whip around turns, enjoy driving, and use the PDK to squeeze all the fun that you can out of the Macan. And as you're taking those turns as hard as possible, make sure to strap your groceries in, because the last thing you want is splattered eggs all over the place. Not so much in the 4-cylinder base Macan, but in the Macan S and the GTS, you do get much more exhaust noise, you get cracks and burbles, and all of those things make the Macan feel less like an SUV and much more like a sports sedan. It's really mind-blowing that this really doesn't feel like a heavy 4,000-pound SUV. The suspension on this thing is quite amazing as well, because it's just the right balance between being sporty, firm, and stable, and at the same time giving you a luxurious feel, and especially if you have PASM with air suspension, it's that much better. Normally, if you have a practical four-door SUV for the family, things that you need to haul around in, you want a weekend car, something that you can have fun with. With the Macan, you don't need anything else. You can just have one car and use it for everything. With many modern day cars, you get a real disconnected feel on the road. Everything is too quiet, too isolated. With the Macan though, that sense of isolation isn't nearly as bad. You still get good road feel, and the handling is still rewarding. The great driving dynamics that you get with this car also means that your passenger space will be slightly smaller, but that's okay. This is a driver-first car, so tell your passengers to just suck it up. If you have passengers that are really complaining about the legroom, then just get the Cayenne. This is a Porsche, so you can expect great build quality, and this car will be worth the price that you're paying for it. Speaking of price, the beautiful thing about the Macan is that it's actually at a decent price point. Don't get me wrong, it's still expensive, starting at $62,900, but a far cry from $120,000 for a 911. A 911 can command that kind of a price tag because it's a one-of-a-kind sports car, a driving experience like no other. And in the same way, the Macan is in a league of its own. It's the most car-like SUV that you can drive. And it's got a signature Porsche look with an amazing front-end design, except for one thing. This giant ball-looking thing, this sensor up front in the middle of the grille, is so horrendous looking. Thank God that I don't have that in my older Macan. What a terrible eyesore. Porsche operates with the mentality of if it ain't broken, don't fix it, except for that sensor, please fix that. But because of that philosophy, the Macan styling has stayed the same year after year, but I'm not complaining because I think it looks fantastic. One thing that Porsche does update though on a regular basis are its wheel designs. These wheels are some of the best looking wheels on any car, including the ones that I have. Porsche does make some really stunning wheels. On the inside, even after all these years, things are virtually the same. The gauges, the dash layout, it's almost exactly the same as what I have in my older Macan. The big difference is the center display with all of the latest and greatest tech, and then also the center stack of buttons. In my Macan, it's button insanity, so I'm glad that in the new Macan, it's a modern and cleaner layout. In the back, Porsche has done nothing with all this in the last 9 years. Zero changes, exactly the same. Given how great the Macan is, you might be wondering if you should bother buying new or just go with the used one. It doesn't matter that the new one is $63,000, I think it's worth it, and it's also the cheapest Porsche that you can buy brand new. But that just means that what I have, which is a 2016 Macan, which you could buy for $25,000, is an amazing deal. Really, the biggest difference is the Macan S of today will give you 375 horsepower as opposed to mine, which is 339. But I don't think 40 extra horsepower is worth $40,000. To me, a used Porsche Macan is an absolute no-brainer purchase. It really is no wonder why the Porsche Macan is the best-selling vehicle of Porsche and why we see so many of these on the road. I'm glad Porsche built this because this allows so many more people to get a taste of what Porsche is really like. Because of the Macan, the Porsche brand is no longer uber unattainable. Normal people can actually buy one. If you buy a used Macan and you pull up at somebody's house, they're not going to believe that your car is worth anything lower than $70,000. You could look rich by buying a cheap used Maserati, but that's a bad idea. Buy a cheap used Macan, you get to look rich and you're driving a great car at the same time. It's brilliant.